Yeah, thank you, Darren. Thank you, David. Thanks, guys, and thanks everyone for coming out. Really excited to be here. I've known about this meetup for a while, but I've been able to make the track up north to come, so excited to have it downtown, and excited to talk. And yeah, hope one day that we'll be here. We'll see about sponsorships at some point. But my name is Josh Schulten. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Yonomi. We are an IoT smart home startup. I'll tell you a little bit about us here in a second. But we're based here in Austin and in Boulder. We're actually literally across the street right now at the Perry Brooks building, like literally across Brazos. So this is not a far track for us.
Can you speak up, please?
Yes.
There's a microphone.
Yeah, I can do that. And sorry, I went for a run in Denver last week and might have hurt my throat in the cold. So yeah, it's good.
It's on the bottom. You gotta hold it in.
All right. Very good. Okay. And I have a reasonably loud voice, so hopefully it's not too loud now. Yonomi is a smart home company. We're an IoT company, and our goal is to make a more connected smart home. Me in the camera. As I said, we've been around since about 2013. We're three co-founders. I'm one of them. The CEO, Kent, is in Boulder, and our other co-founder, Garrett, is here as well. As I said, we're dual headquartered in Austin and in Boulder. We're kind of agnostically split, so we have about 10 people in Boulder now and 12 people in Austin. We don't really kind of have any divisions. We just kind of grow and find people as we need them to. Next slide. So we started out 2013, in this very different world where Nest existed, Fitbit existed, but there wasn't really any other smart device that had kind of become a premium device on the market. It was just this very early stages of something you could go buy at Best Buy or Target existing. I come from a background of high-end, old-school AMX and Crestron and Savant integration. So this was like a revelation to me at the time. And I have an engineering background and went to UT. But come 2010, 2011, these things started to come on the market, started to see some opportunity, started to get annoyed that you couldn't go integrate with these things, you couldn't go build more interesting applications on top of them. So myself and Ken, one of the other co-founders, had been talking for a couple of years, and we eventually got together and decided that we had kind of this mutual interest in starting a company that could bring this type of integration, this type of automation to a more widespread audience, just basically to everyone. And not only that, but we could find a way to go build integrations to everything in the world, and that was the way of the future. And we had to go. That was our mission. So that's where we started. So we started out by building a mobile app, which was obviously very trendy at the time. But we started with the Yonomi mobile app. That's still a mobile app that exists on the Play Store and App Store today. We have just under 500,000 users. But it's a mobile app that connects smart home devices, so things like Nest, Ecobee, Philips Hue, LifeX, Honeywell, Schlage locks, obviously voice assistants now, all these sorts of connected devices that you would find at Best Buy, Target, or Amazon. We're using APIs that they expose, integrating with them, and finding value to make them interoperable, to aggregate them, to do interesting smart home functionality with them. So we started out there. We since have needed to make money, so we have gone into enterprise products. We now make an enterprise version of that app called Yonomi One, and another product I'll talk about here in a second called ThinkCloud. So just to touch on the consumer app, the goal is to be a kind of best-of-breed smart home aggregation integration app. So our competitors might be someone like Ift or Stringify on the hub kind of approach, smart things or Wink, and obviously Alexa and Google are getting into this space now as well. We offer kind of standard features that you'd expect. You can kind of find all your devices. We connect with a couple hundred individual devices, over 100 different integrations, over 30 or 40 kind of different accounts. We'll try and help you find those things as quickly as possible, set them up as easily as possible, and then make some suggestions based on those devices, depending on exactly what you have. So we can then let you control those devices, see the state of those devices, put them into scenes, call these routines or rules, and automate them. One of the things that we do is we try to make the identification of these devices as accessible and as easy as possible. You don't have to manually go say, I have a Hue account and a Schlage account and a Lifex account and a service account. We'll scan your phone for apps that you might have that suggest accounts that you might have. We'll scan your network. We try to make this as simple as possible. And then on the previous slide, we'll give you some suggestions about what you might be able to do with those devices out of the box. So given that, the original goal was to try and make these kind of automation-based, or largely automated. That's still the goal. We've kind of backtracked a little bit from not wanting to provide manual control and not provide state data and just kind of be a back-end kind of hidden device, hidden product, to being a bit more of a holistic. We can do all these things well now that we have the manpower. So we're still not trying to be a remote control, but that is some functionality we can provide. But our bread and butter is within routines. So that means automated events and that means scenes. So it means based on time of day events, sunset, sunrise, sun events, or sensor or state events, we can automate all the actions for devices we support in house. So when I wake up or it's sunrise, then adjust the temperature, turn on the lights, brew my coffee, play some music, make an announcement, tell me the weather. All kind of standard things you'd expect now, kind of from the Amazon for sure. But not only that, we can do this kind of conditionally. So we can put conditional logic on these things. So I can say, this is my routine, but I only do this routine on a weekday. I don't do this on Sunday. I want to sleep in. Please don't wake me up at 7:30 to brew the coffee and play some music. So we can support multiple events, multiple order events, as many actions as possible as you want to put in there, grouped actions, and multiple entity conditions that kind of scope that routine to what you want to do. Next one. As mentioned, we'll personalize routines. We'll provide some recommendations. So you might have a Valentine's Day Netflix and chill recommendation that plays some romantic music and dims the lights. But if you don't have a Sonos and you have a Bose, maybe we'll show you the exact device that you support. If you don't have Hue, we'll use your Lifex lights, and we won't show you devices that don't support yet. So that's kind of a brief overview of the app. Happy to talk about that a little bit more later, but that is a free app. It's in the App Store. We'd love for you to check it out if you've never heard of it, never seen it before. We don't charge for that. We never plan to charge for that. It's continuously improving, and because something I'll tell you here in a second, it's supported by the enterprise products and it's built on the same platform as the enterprise products. It's always getting better. We're always adding integrations, and there's always going to be new value that we're doing. So onto the platform products, we have two, ThinCloud again and Yonomi One. I'm the product owner for Yonomi One and the mobile app, so I'm going to talk about ThinCloud first to get that out of the way. And then we can just talk about the things that I care about. ThinCloud actually came to be because it was our first money-making enterprise product, because we started to approach partners and device manufacturers and get these relationships. And we were saying, okay, we'd love to integrate with you, but we need APIs, and we need to make those accessible. We need to be able to work with them. We need standard auth. We need all these standard spec, all these standard specifications. And they'd say, yeah, we don't really have that, right? And so there was a problem for us to solve. And we had a kind of a deep background in building APIs, and building platforms, and hosting these and making them secure, and understanding devices and this ecosystem. So we thought that this was something that we could help with. So what ended up happening is we got with a couple partners. We ended up slowly building this product that's now ThinCloud, which is a turnkey backend as a service effectively for consumer-based IoT products. It's serverless, it's built in AWS, a number of AWS products, but if you have a connected product and you need a fast way to get to the cloud, you need a way that helps you manage costs, provision devices, use it securely, handle all the really kind of like nitty-gritty things that are complicated, that are tricky to scale, and tricky to do if you don't have a specific experience. That's exactly what ThinCloud is built for. So we have a number of clients on that now. Our first big customers, one of our first big customers, one of our investors is Schlage. So we actually support their backend. And they came to us basically. They know how to make locks. They used to have a Z-Wave lock. Just got a Z-Wave lock that runs against like Wink or Smart Things. And then they had a Bluetooth HomeKit lock. But they've never owned their own platform. They've never actually had their own API. 5 years ago it was very clever. 5 years ago they don't have to assume any of the costs. It was easy for them to just go, hey Apple, hey Smart Things, hey Wink, you take on that responsibility. But they got none of the benefit either. And the world quickly changed, and suddenly there's voice assistants, suddenly there's a bunch of data, and they don't understand who their users are because they don't see, they don't even know how many users have 2 locks because they don't get that data back. So they very quickly realized they needed an API. We were happy to help them, and this is the case for anyone now. You go look at Alexa, you go look at Google, and you start scrolling through the list of connected services, and there's thousands and thousands of integrations in there. So everyone now making a connected device obviously kind of needs to have own their own platform, and that's generally what it's designed to do. So now to talk about Yonomi 1. Yonomi 1 was always kind of planned. It is a platform version of our mobile app. So it's a way to aggregate, integrate across multiple devices, and put smart home services on top of it. So you take the app, you get rid of the actual mobile app, and if you have your own experience, if you have your own service, your own product that needs to leverage connected devices in some capacity, that's what Yonomi 1 does. But if I'm an insurance company and I want to support 10 different smoke detectors or water leak detectors, I don't want to have to go integrate with every single one of these things. If I build an ebook that is a kid's book and I can turn through pages and play scary thunder noises for my kid and flash the lights to like produce an effect, I don't want to go integrate with Hue and Osram and LifeX and Wink and Smart Things. I want to be able to just do that with one API. Separately, I don't want to have to go figure out how to get state data from all of them. I don't want to authenticate against all of them. I don't want to manage all those things. Huge pain in the ass. So that's exactly what Yonomi 1 is designed to solve. And it delivers integrations across pretty much all of the devices that we support in the app. There's a couple of exceptions, but generally we can support all those integrations, and then on top of that we kind of lay a typical smart home functionality, again similar to what you would see in the app: authentication, device discovery, device management, user management, setting up routines and scenes, things like that. It's a platform, so there's cloud-based APIs. We have local SDKs in some cases for integrating that with a mobile app or with a backend service, and happy to see some friendly faces in the audience that are using some of these things now too. So as mentioned, we have about nearly a couple hundred individual devices. That's across 100 or so different integrations. We continually are adding new integrations all the time. And yeah, we're kind of filling out the ecosystem, making sure that we fill in all the holes, and as new devices and new grants come out, we support those. Long term, that's obviously not sustainable, and we'll open up the platform in another way so you can go build an integration into the platform and hopefully derive value that way too. So I kind of touched on this already, but really the bread and butter, the real value that the platform is providing is normalization. So we're doing that across control, we're doing that across state, we're doing that across authentication. The issue is you can't go do this at scale if you're a big company and need to go support all of the popular connected lights out there. So we'll do that where a light bulb looks like a light bulb. It supports turning on, changing the color, changing the brightness level, querying for state, things like that. But when a new light bulb comes out, we support it. You don't have to do anything. It's just automatically available to you, and you can use it out of the box. Next one. Here's a list of the things that it can support, but we're starting to really get a better picture. I mean, it really isn't just like control and state querying, but it's about all these little things that are a pain in the butt for you to have to handle yourself. If you have to go figure out how to authenticate into every single light bulb type, every single smoke detector type, if you have to go figure out how to discover it or add it, or every single rest command or XML command to control that device, it's a lot of work. And then whenever it changes, you have more work to go do. You have to manage that, you have to look for errors, you have to keep up on all those APIs, and that's something that Yonomi 1 abstracts away. And of course, we're a platform company. We make multiple products, so you've got some synergy between all our platform products. So if you are a device maker and you make a connected product, the goal is that we can automatically include that in Yonomi 1. So out of the box, we'll give you a cloud, you'll get your own API, you can take that and do whatever you want with it. But you also get Alexa integration, you also get Google Assistant integration, and you get Yonomi 1 integration, which means you automatically work with all these other devices as well. Okay, so the topic of the day that I'm here to talk to you about is kind of my perspective and our vision at Yonomi on what the future of interoperability and automation for the smart home looks like. It's obviously a big topic, we're in interesting times. The last couple of years, Google and Amazon and Apple have obviously shifted the conversation quite a bit. My story goes that we existed for 3 years, 2.5 years, and then at like some WWDC event, Apple started hinting at HomeKit. And every single time for the next 6 months at a time, I would go like just be fixed to this computer going, oh my God, Apple's gonna kill us, Apple's gonna kill us, Apple's gonna kill us. And fortunately, Apple didn't really do that. Amazon Google came along and have done a little bit better. But we're still in interesting times. Things are evolving, consumer rights and consumer data. Questions and privacy issues are out there. But at the same time, if we can solve some of these problems, then there's some really interesting applications for what we can do with the smart home as a platform, and hopefully users can still derive value from this. So, jump back really quick. We're going to talk about current state of the smart home, connected home, some trends that we're seeing right now that have an impact, of probably where we go next. Our vision of what the smart home looks like as a platform, and building vertical solutions on top of that, and then some guesses for what the smart home, some educated guesses about what the smart home probably looks like from there. Thanks, Camille. So today we've kind of broken the existing ecosystem into 4 different categories. You obviously have hubs, things like SmartThings, Vera, Wink, multi-radio. You don't have to have dedicated bridges for your Hue and for your Insteon and for any separate, little Lutron, every single little Z-Wave is Zigbee or Bluetooth device, and that's great. I generally categorize, hub users a little bit into the enthusiast category, that people who have gone and said, we used to have this saying, it's changed a little bit now, but no one really wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what I want to do today? I want to go buy a smart home system. No one really thinks like that. No one goes to Best Buy and says, I'm buying a smart home, right? What they do is they go and they buy a Hue system because they want to control their lights and it's convenient. They go buy a Sonos because they want to listen to music. They go buy a lock because they want to be able to check the door. They go buy a switch because they want to turn off their hair straightener and make sure it's off from away from home. So no one's going out and broadly just saying, here are all the things I want. I've got it. I'm never changing my mind. What they want is interoperability, and they want to go buy the best of breed product that works with everything else. So hubs are generally great. You're locked in to some extent. They're obviously to the enthusiast who's willing to go spend that time and effort to use them and research them and figure out what's the best fit for them. It's a good solution, and they give you some sort of local control as well, which if you're concerned about privacy and security, that can be a plus. But if they cost you money, you have to support them, you have to worry about them dying, things like that. Then we also have voice, obviously. This is continuing to replace hubs a little bit, obviously taking a huge amount of the market and growing the market and lifting all ships with big wave. So voice is great, and who in here doesn't have a voice system right now? 1, 2, 3, yeah. So about 10% of the room, right? And guess what? You have a phone that probably has a voice assistant, and Google will tell you it's not this complex. I think there's something, Google puts out numbers like there's 1 billion Google Assistants out there, there's 1 billion Android devices out there. For, ridiculous numbers. The users that are using that with smart home, obviously a very small percent. But I recall hearing numbers from Amazon very early on, 3 or 4 years ago when Alexa started coming out, that they expected numbers from Alexa when they first turned it on, specifically smart home. This is when they had Belkin and Hue support, and maybe a couple others. They expected that to be about 1% of all invocations, and in the first 6 months it was 20%. Like there was a clear runaway hit for that's what Amazon, you know, and they went very deep, obviously, with their smart home aspirations from that point on. Voice isn't going away, but these are generally cloud. You go write your interface to Amazon's cloud, and that's talking back to you through some cloud API. Amazon obviously has a Z-Wave, Google has some Bluetooth support coming, I believe. So there's some local things, but it's generally going to be the kind of cloud interface. Onto the cloud, there's obviously some cloud-based solutions like us at Yonomi. You might see things like IF or Stringify, but these are almost exclusively cloud APIs. They're generally free, they're mobile apps, there might be web pages or services that run the background. But they let you do some more interesting things. They might serve as a bridge to a voice assistant. You know, at Yonomi, we can do some more interesting things with routines that Alexa can't do, or Google can't do, add some extra context. It serves as kind of a way to be able to transport your integrations around. So you don't have to be like, well, I'm locked into Alexa, I don't like Alexa anymore, now I'm locked into Google, I don't like Google anymore, you know. You can have a kind of third-party, agnostic party that serves as the bridge for that. Stringify, IFT, both good solutions. Stringify got bought by Comcast about a year ago. IFT has certainly pivoted a bit more hard towards smart home the last several years. But actually, from our perspective, Yonomi was probably the very first software-only approach to solving the connected home problem. And finally, you have this kind of enthusiast group. So things like Habitat, OpenHab, and Home Assistant, not really intended to this extent for you know, for grandma and grandpa. You have to probably have some background in programming, or at least have, you know, a wish to go sit there and learn a bunch of shell scripts and kill scripts to make these work and to make them work exactly the way you want. So I've used these myself. They're doing really cool stuff. They're obviously community driven, but they're not quite where you know we have a vision for the connected home being acceptable to the mass market yet. So here's some trends that we're seeing right now on in the landscape, and I don't know what it's closing my microphone, but interoperability still matters. So you might think, you know, I have a voice assistant and I have a light, and I turn my thing on and off. But more and more interoperability remains important and remains critical for device makers to build into the devices. And it's higher than I would expect from this list. A device has to work with another device. It has to work with a voice assistant, but beyond that, it has to work with other devices as well. So we're also seeing that large platforms, and I'm not going to name companies, but large platforms are evolving, they're maturing, they're facing challenges themselves, and kind of the face of the market is changing as, you know, consumers make decisions based on how these companies react. So there are still lessons to be learned for big tech companies as they start to ask for more and more data. We're starting to see device makers push back a little bit, where Amazon and Google are actually asking you to port all data asynchronously. So every time your Hue bulb turns on or off, Amazon and Google is generally getting that it's connected. So that's something that device makers are aware of, and it's a big struggle for them. Talking from experience for being closely associated with these companies, and these people might have 1 or 2 API developers, and they may have spent the last 6 months just building things to appease Google and Alexa, but they have a choice because this is a huge way to go sell these devices. At the same time, to me, it's surprisingly been very quiet about how little kind of attention this is received, because it's a little bit of a debatable practice that you don't really understand that your switch data and your light data and everything you do when you touch your connected device, if it's connected to Google and Alexa, might be getting shipped back to them. And we could give them the benefit of the doubt, and they're doing that to show updates in their own app. They're doing it to go to machine learning things, but it's still a questionable tactic, and it still has some consequences for the device makers themselves. That said, there's opportunity there if you can help the device makers accomplish that. If you're a non-service company, if you're a company that's historically made hardware, if you've never really been in the cloud, you have a lot of users, you've billions of users, maybe you're still trying to play catch up. So you might have a smart home solution that needs some work, and Google and Amazon are passing you. Other companies, other big companies are requiring smart home companies or platform companies to go solve some of these problems. That also raises questions. So, that causes slowdowns in development, that causes massive platform shifts, that causes security and privacy issues if you're a user. If Google goes and buys your company, if Samsung goes and buys your company, what happens to your data, right? What happens to you as a user's data? What happens to you when that relationship as a device maker? And finally, non-traditional players, non-traditional tech companies falling behind. So ISPs, security companies, companies that are lower tech, they need to fight this, right? They can't let Google and Amazon win this war without a little bit of pushback. So they need to be competitive, they need to stay competitive, and they're looking for answers as well. And finally, we're fortunately starting to see consumers push back. And consumers are asking for rights, they're asking for more information, they're complaining when you see something that's not quite right. So you want your connected device to last. You don't want it to die if the company, this Kickstarter product that you bought never succeeds, right? You want to get your product, and then if the cloud shuts down 6 months later because they haven't planned ahead, that's not right? You put in a lot of value just to buy it. You put in money to get that device, and as part of that device, you expect that thing to last. You expect to be able to use that device with other things. When you buy it, you probably have like an implicit understanding that it probably works with voice assistants for free. You probably have an implicit understanding that you can probably take this and make it work with other integrations for free too. And we're starting to see products that have not planned ahead, who have not kind of figured out how to build the cloud properly, that are charging money to do these integrations. And that's not ideal either from a consumer perspective. Obviously, you should be able to choose who you connect your device to, what data they get. And it gets very complicated because that's a huge chain, right? You don't know who has your data very quickly. Well, I gave it to Yonomi. What is Yonomi doing? Who's Yonomi selling that data to? Is Yonomi chaining, on and on and on? We're not. But you don't know that, right? You have to have some level of trust.
Who's going to buy Yonomi?
But we have a very specific privacy policy, and it's the first part of it is in clear English that explains what your rights are. We think that's very important, and we will never sell personally identifiable data for any reason. And then privacy and security. We're seeing a big push in this now. You see announcements like Nest, the Nest Secure having a microphone in it. As an engineer, I can understand why that happened. It's like every product they have has a microphone in it. Someone at Nest just assumed everyone knew that, right? And the marketing person overlooked it, the person writing the manual overlooked it, and they just didn't stick it. And now they're getting, Congress is going, why didn't you tell anyone there's a microphone in here? And there's very little chance Nest to use it again. Google has 1 billion phones. If they really wanted to go get every recording of you, there's easier ways to do it than doing it through your little security thing that's by your front door. But the good news is regulators and the governments are taking action. GDPR is in effect. That's certainly had some effect on every tech company. We spent several months, making sure we were in agreement with that. We were in spec with that, and it seems like US versions are likely to follow. And again, consumers are taking notice, and media companies are taking notice too. So these are all very good things. So that brings us to, having said all these things about privacy, that brings us to some applications that we hope should all, it's never going to be solved, there's always going to be concerns, but it's a thing that, we as IoT professionals and we in the connected home space have to face, right? These are problems that have to be understood and respected and solved if there's going to be a more broad way to go get value out of these ecosystems. Assuming we can solve those, assuming that we can do the customer right, the consumer right, then we open up a whole world of possibilities and interesting things as technology progresses. And that's the freaking awesome thing about technology, is it gets better and better, and because it's software, we can build more and more interesting things on top of it over time. Good comes with the bad. We can solve the bad, then there's unlimited potential. So what we're looking to do with Yonomi 1 is turn the house into an API, turn the house into a platform. If we can make all of your devices agnostic, if we can view a light bulb as a light, and a switch as a switch, and a thermostat as a thermostat, then there are certain archetypes that exist that we understand and can expose to service providers to do really interesting things with. And some of that might be data-based, and with your specific user, consumer opt-in, we can go, let them learn something interesting about you, again, with your opt-in. And very quickly, there's all sorts of interesting applications that come across multiple verticals, things like eldercare, real estate, insurance, automotive, energy management, security, all sorts of interesting things that your data has. And this is kind of how we view the platform, is it has kind of two major tenets. It has control, so I can control your devices, and I can do this agnostically across any of these things, and state. And we can aggregate and make your state data agnostic. So every security event, every smoke event looks the same, right? It doesn't matter if it's a Honeywell smoke detector or a Nest smoke detector. If we can pull that data out, that's very valuable to the insurance company who wants to know if you have a water leak detector, or if you have a just a smart thermostat, or a fire or smoke detector. Just knowing that might mean the actuarial scientists can go say, we trust them, that it's not going to happen every time, but because they have this leak detector, because they have a smoke detector, they're 5% less likely to have a major event, and we can give them a discount. So this ideally serves, back to the curriculum, this ideally serves everyone. We see this as a virtuous cycle that serves consumers, service providers, and the device makers. If you're a device maker, if the consumer has trust, if the consumer gets more value, then you can sell more devices. If you're a consumer, you hopefully are getting more value out of these services. You're not just getting the basic value you're getting by turning your lights on and off, by knowing if there's a fire. You're also getting value because you save some money. You're also getting value because these things work together in an aggregate way that is meaningful to you. And if you're a service provider, you can go build things on top of these devices that provide value to the consumer. And as we shift more and more to a service-oriented approach to selling, where everything costs money every month, they have to be able to deliver that value, right? They have to be able to sell you both a device and a service, or use those devices to constantly deliver value. So this also benefits consumers. You don't know what you want, right? You don't actually know what is out there for you, because you don't know what services are available. You don't know what devices might work with these things. So if you can build a platform that supports these, it's like an app store. Then there's some discoverability that's accessible to you as a user to go see, hey, I have all these devices. What can I work with? And that opens the door for all sorts of things. There might be vertical applications, but then also opens the door to machine learning, because everything's kind of, again, aggregated, everything's standardized and normalized. And it opens the door to analytics and data solutions too. I made the font too small. So this is the current perspective. This is kind of the current landscape. As Amazon and Google have tens and tens of millions of users. They've got you locked in. You've kind of chosen, maybe Apple, you've chosen yours. Maybe you've gone to Google because they've got a bit voice AI, or maybe you go back to Alexa because the smart home skills are a bit better. But you've kind of got locked in, you're fixed, and as a result, they keep moving down the stack to go do this aggregations, integration layer. And they're fundamentally competitive to us at this point because they keep building all this tech into their own apps, and that's the goal. How far they're going to go, I'm not sure. I don't quite imagine them ever going into every single edge case. They just saw today that Google finally added color selection on light bulbs. So they're always going to move a little bit slower. At an app level, we hope to be competitive with those guys and really be a proper smart home player, not just someone interested in everything around it. At the same time, device makers and router makers and ISPs and security companies are trying to move up the chain, right? Comcast is coming out with remotes with voice, and people building people are building things they have no business being the business building fundamentally, because they have to play catch up. They have to play in this thing. You have companies like Simply Home that are building smart home solutions based on Chinese OEM Z-Wave things that they're just wrapping, right? They're never going to be competitive with Google, but they might have a niche that they can fill. At the same time, all those guys, especially the big guys, are always putting their best interests first. So all the mega tech guys are always going to be about locking you in. They're never going to be open, bidirectionally open. All they're going to be is open, which is, hey, device maker, please come integrate with us. We want all your data. We want your users, right? They're never going to give you that data back out. They're never going to, I never see a day where Alexa or Google has a smart home API into their hub, and we get those support requests sometimes like, okay, I have Yonomi, I have an Echo Plus, how do I go control my Z-Wave devices? That API doesn't exist. I don't see that ever existing. And that's where we see Yonomi coming in, which is, as a device maker, you need to go integrate with Alexa for voice control, Google for voice control. But if you want to go integrate with everything else, then you need an agnostic platform provider that provides that integration layer. That's what Yonomi provides. And if we can do that, then and build that platform, then these vertical solutions can be built upon. And we've been talking to all sorts of interesting things, including pet care and insurance and home services and understanding your home and how clean your air is, and all sorts of applications that only work if you can take out the complexity of the integration layer and just turn that into a platform and turn that into a service, so the people who are good at insurance and the people who are good at elder care can focus on the things that they're good at. So that leads us to the future. As I alluded to earlier, we believe consumers are really starting to have more expectations about their product requirements, and you can't really listen to a podcast or read an article without it really being kind of focused on what the consumer expects at this point. And consumers are starting to demand that their security beliefs and their privacy policies and their data requests be on. And I've responded to enough, please delete my account emails that I'm completely aware. At the same time, all devices, they want those devices to be interoperable. They want those devices to be connected as long as they're secure, as long as they have faith and control of them. And because they're interoperable, they're already connected, but you have to protect those over time. So my lock can't not work in 6 months. We're gonna put that trivia back up later, by the way, because I think we were very few responses, and we do have swag. So put in some answers, and you might win a coffee mug or some socks or a shirt. Hector's modeling for us over here. But one of those topics that I literally saw today was there's a sneaker company making connected sneakers, and did anyone see this article about there's a firmware bug, and because of that you can't tighten your sneakers because it's a connected set of sneakers, and you can't tighten your sneakers because there's a firmware bug. So consumers have some expectations that your sneakers continue to work after 6 months if they decide to get rid of their cloud. They're still shoes, and this is only going to be more prevalent as time goes on, where a chip and some connectivity layer is in every single thing we have, right? So this is a fundamental problem that has to be solved, and it has to be solved pretty much right now. And at the same time, it's the same kind of chain thing. Those things have to work. If those things are going to work with everyone, then consumers have to understand and be able to see who they're working with, where the data's going, where that control's coming from. When my lights start turning on at 3 a.m., I need to know if it's because I wrote some really bad code for Yonomi, or if it's because someone else has control of my devices. I need to have a clear understanding of where those interactions are happening. Probably more importantly, I need to know who is sucking up my data as well.
Yeah, my fear is that at 3 in the morning, I'm gonna get woken up because my refrigerator got into a fight with my toaster. Have to calm them both down.
I think I remember there's a Java t-shirt from 2000 that was talking about toasters talking to each other.
Yeah.
True story, some of you may listen to the Stacey Higginbotham podcast, who does an IoT podcast, and our very first interaction with her, and she still is in Austin, but we were very excited to go talk with her and put our product out there and have her review it. And it so she did a hangout with us, and we were talking about what Yonomi was, and it was all early days. And she actually, it was 6 months in, it was like, we had 1,000 users, and I was terrified, and I was like the only engineer working at this time. And it worked, she downloaded it, she signed up, everything, was reasonably stable. She set it up right in front of us, everything went fine, except at the time we were a little bit more aggressive about trying to get you to engage. So we actually set up some routines for you automatically, we actually created these for you automatically. And one of them included making announcements and playing music on your service. We didn't have the best approach to detecting when you left home or came home. We did it based on Wi-Fi at the time, we did it based on geofence. We didn't really double check things. So at some point at 2 a.m. that night or the next night, her phone dropped off Wi-Fi, her phone reconnected to Wi-Fi, and at 70% volume in all of her kids' rooms, Sono said, "Good morning, Stacey. It's going to be 68 degrees today," and then started playing some music. She was very nice. I think she talks about it on the podcast, she mentions this on. So there's always problems to solve there, but you want to understand those things. You want to know pretty clear who did that one, but you want to know who's causing those things and where your data's going and what all those connections are. So given kind of consumer expectations, here are kind of our beliefs of where the smart home market goes to. More devices get connected. Devices will never stop being connected. We're kind of, you might have to move to Mars, and even then I'm sure Elon Musk has some plans, but we're never going to start to see devices stop being connected. Every single little thing you have is going to be connected, whether you want it or not. I'm sure there will be some niche market for non-connected devices in the future, but these are going to get more cheaper. They're more and more cheap, more and more efficient, cheaper to host, cheaper to manage. But at the same time, your expectations of these devices are going to get up, right? Just because it's a light bulb, you're going to expect, not only that it has better privacy, better security, but you're going to expect it to have more features over time. You're going to expect it should work with voice assistants out of the box. It should interoperate with other devices out of the box. So that's only going to continue. But your expectations and your requests and your demand is going to cause change, and that's a great thing. But we're all human, and I still want my light bulb to turn on when I tell it to turn on, right? And we're probably still going to look past some of those things, even if we are concerned about it in the back of our mind, we're still going to say, it'll be fine. So that still remains important. Easy use is always fundamental. Voice assistants aren't going anywhere. Voice continues to get better and better. That's going to be great. Voice will literally be everywhere, as the Amazon Super Bowl commercial tried to show us. But it will get better. It'll become more natural. We'll stop having kind of this fundamental problem of, well, I said it this specific way, and I said, hey, turn on light, and it didn't understand me because the microphone already didn't catch me, or I didn't phrase it exactly, the way it expected. The AI and machine learning behind those things will get better, and it'll be like just talking out loud, casually, without having to think about how to phrase these things. And because of that, the assistants get better too, because that's fundamentally what these are. They're text-driven or voice-driven assistants. As the machine learning gets better, your life gets easier, and that'll be good. Hubs probably start to fade away a little bit. I've seen some controversial statements about whether or not this is really true. You'll see pushback from enthusiasts saying, I'm never taking my hub away. And there will always be solutions for them. I think there's more polished, homegrown solutions now than there's ever been. But for the mass market, for the tens of millions of users and hundreds of millions of users, clearly Alexa and Google are taking away dominance of smart things and things like that. At the same time, I think we'll see some stuff, continue to be put into routers, into those people that control those things, but they'll be delivered as well. At the same time, interfaces will become more agnostic, and you'll expect that your device can do anything that your voice tells it, right? So even if you don't know it exists, maybe you just say, I can't think of a really good example for why you want to do this, but you might want to say, hey, light bulb, flash the, maybe I'm trying to alert the pizza driver, right? And I can tell my voice assistant that, hey, notify my front porch light to flash. That's probably not functionality that's built into your voice system right now, but that might be functionality that we'll eventually expect over time, and that means APIs have to get better, that means integrations have to get better, that means again that these protocols and this agnosticism and interoperability between all these devices has to get to a point where it's just kind of natural. And finally, some smart home kind of expectations for tomorrow, things that we see driving tomorrow. Again, privacy, security, and user trust fundamentally has to be there first. And once that's there, you know, world is our oyster, and technology can serve us for good, hopefully. We'll take an optimistic view. Machine learning and AI will start to make a meaningful impact. We're actually starting to see this now. I think Alexa has what they call nudges or hunches, or hudges or hugs, something like that. But they have some data, they have all this data that it's collecting, and they're starting to do things that like make suggestions saying, looks like you left one of your lights off, you don't normally leave that off, would you like me to turn it off? And that is part of, someone was asking earlier, where did Yonomi come from? But it's supposed to be play on Yonomi, you doing the same sort of thing, which is, if we have enough data about your house, about your home, about your platform, we can make some of those guesses, right? And this is one of my favorite topics that I can ramble on about for a while, but context becomes very important. Context becomes more and more important because it doesn't really matter what, a device is not necessarily valuable just because you turn it on or off, but a sensor device is transparent, it's kind of hidden, and it may not be valuable in itself, but when it is aggregated and when it's interoperable, all that stuff becomes really important. And my favorite really quick story I like to tell here is anyone familiar with the quirky egg tray?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah.
Used to have, I should say.
How much do you buy that for?
No, I didn't buy $5.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah, no, at the end of life and everything, so I just picked it
Yeah,
up. But
so-
it consumed batteries, so it goes crazy.
Josh is familiar. It was literally just 5-6 years ago, a company called Quirky, who was the parent company of Wink at the time, they back and forth several times, built a connected egg tray. Literally a connected egg tray. You had extra value because it actually took 14 eggs, which just made it even bigger and more difficult to get out of your fridge. I tried to use it in practice once. It was Wi-Fi too, took batteries. Standalone, it sounded kind of interesting because you could actually, it would tell you which egg was the oldest. It would tell you if you're at the grocery store, do I have eggs? Maybe if you make a lot of eggs or omelets, that's a useful thing to you. And it was a fine thing in practice, I think. It was a,
It was a stupid thing in practice.
yeah, it was
It
a
was just
fine.
a fun thing to have and talk to. Oh, wait a minute, how many eggs do I? Oh, 4.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
but
else? Who
In
cares?
theory, it was not meant. I don't think it was actually meant to be a
Serious
product,
product, I
serious
hope so,
product.
because it
but
was
we can never forget the pet rock and,
Yeah.
and the hula hoop.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's great. You're playing into my story, which is it was a stupid product, but it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. People were playing around with stuff, but I looked at it from a perspective of, okay, this is terrible. I think the one time I tried to use it, I literally cracked an egg because the whole thing was out of my fridge. It cost me $14. It retailed for $100. I think it went down to like 50 to 40, and I got it on Amazon for $14. I think my dad bought one as well and took it apart to take like IR sensors out of it. But the lesson I learned from this is, if the software is good enough, I'm not actually going to use it for that, right? But it does have some interesting contextual information. If it knows I take the tray off and I pull an egg, it knows I'm making breakfast. It knows it's probably the morning, it knows I'm in the kitchen. That's a sensor device, right? And by itself, that's interesting. But with the voice assistant, right, or another device, maybe that's pretty interesting. Maybe my voice assistant can say, hey, Joss, it looks like you're making something with eggs, would you like an omelet recipe? Or, by the way, here's a reminder that I can help you with unit conversions, or something like that. So it's state data, or maybe just turns on the TV to the Food Network, right? There's some interesting things you can do if you get creative with this data once these things all work together more naturally. And then on the shades of grey thing, this is a scary subject for consumers, but I think there's ways to solve this where over time these companies, our companies, we're never going to jump in and be like, turn on the switch that controls your house automatically, right? It's never going to be that good. We're never going to have faith in ourselves to be able to implement that to that extent. Instead, it's going to be a user training exercise where it's, hey, here's a suggestion, right? Here's a routine we think that would be good for you right now. Or here's, we know all your lights are off, so instead of, we're not going to turn the lights on for you, here's a button elevated, to the front of your home screen or to your watch that you just, or through a notification, like a rich notification, that says, hey, all your lights are off. If you'd like to turn them on, click here and turn it back on. And the idea is you never have to dive deep into these apps to go use these things. And it, maybe over time that becomes, hey, I know you go to bed every day between 11 and 11:05. I'm going to make sure the thermostat's set to 72 degrees or whatever, right? And it's cool. And I'm going to turn these lights out front because I know you do that every day. You have an option to cancel it right now, but if you don't take an action next minute, I'll do it, right? And then here's a way to revert, right? So this shades of gray is kind of a fine line between the user doing things and the computer taking over, machine taking over. But over time, these things hopefully serve us. And finally, everyone wants it. This is the thing that Yonomi 1's really trying to push, that we see as value, is that over time these things are prevalent everywhere. It's a way of life to most people. And if you trust it, you hopefully are getting some benefit. I'm not as loud as I think. Probably a good thing. But everyone wants in, so ISPs, security companies, insurance companies, everyone's going to see this as a way of life, and everyone needs a way to connect to this smart home and to connect to devices. And that will, we've already seen this. This is outside your home, right? This is on your wrist. This is in your car. This is on your pet. This is in your fridge. This is in your egg tray. So everyone's going to want a way to connect with these devices and get value out of them. So that's kind of how we see it, and certainly happy to answer questions. Yes, sir.
Regarding security, I mean, it's been true that, the past couple of years that IoT devices have been a vector for malware and nefarious bots. How do you see things moving in the future since these devices are connected? The economy, for a hardware developer or hardware manufacturer to build security in isn't there. Do you think it'll be market-driven, lawsuit-driven, or government law-driven?
Yeah, I think those are probably all generally the same thing. We're very fortunate. We made the best decision our company ever made was not to make hardware. It was a very good decision.
Yeah.
That said, we work with a lot of device makers, and this is why we see the value, right? It's obviously at multiple levels where you have to trust your firmware maker, and we've got a big, Huawei, we've got a big conversation right now in the government going, can we trust Chinese device makers, right? So you've got to be able to trust your hardware maker. There's probably going to have to be some regulation at the hardware level, and there's certainly going to be some regulation at the software and privacy level right now that's coming in. California already has something, right? You've got to meet certain standards. But
that's been a problem throughout the industry,
Yeah.
even with PCs, is
Yeah.
that there's no, if there's a breach in Windows, some security breach, they're not held culpable.
right.
And, we haven't seen that yet. I mean, ultimately, it would seem like the way to do that would be through litigation,
Right.
but that just hasn't happened yet. So
I
it
think
seems like regulation is
I think that'll happen. I think regulation is going to be forced upon the industry, whether it wants it or not. Maybe the implicit that it's coming will cause people to shape up a little bit. But I mean, people have to care, right? And I know there's a lot of device makers. You just have to care about some of these things. And as a software maker, we have to write good software. Tests have to be in place. That's the starting thing. You have to go care. It effectively, hopefully, becomes kind of the smart lock front door problem, which is there's always going to be a way to do these things, but hopefully it's difficult enough, and hopefully that the quantities are big enough where you don't have that concern, right?
Well, one of the upside or things heading in the right direction is I've seen is ARM, which basically owns that embedded market. Their real-time operating system, embed, they are adding IoT security in a very real way. So
Yep.
that
So it's market driven, right? As they see an opportunity to go build this in, they lose money if they do it wrong. If they don't sell the product, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be partly market driven, where, and I'm sure it'll just be kind of a
it's hard though
drop
for
down the stack.
a startup developing you know, a hardware product to say, okay, we're not gonna release that until this security's done.
Sure.
It costs of time associated with that is real.
Yeah, and that's got to be a little bit on the consumer too, right? Which is I need to only buy, I need to start asking the right questions, I need to be educated and understand the questions to ask, and I'm not going to go buy the product off Kickstarter that is entirely marketing driven right now,
Yeah.
and I know that this is too cheap and too good to be true. You know, you got to have some faith in the product that you're buying, that people have the experience and that they're spending the time to do it right, and it goes back to understanding what they're doing with security, what they're doing with data, how they're spending their money, those types of things.
So you were mentioning your egg tray example. So if you'd like to experience that, all you have to do is go to Round Rock and park in their downtown parking garage, and they have sensors to tell you whether their parking spots are available or not available.
Yep. It's good. I mean, that's obviously an example of right now. IoT will serve everyone. I don't have to go do a Seinfeld trip around the parking lot to find a parking spot. But yeah, it's the same thing. The other interesting thing I think we see with that space is cameras. I've talked to several people where it's not economical to go outfit you can go get a balloon or whatever, right? And put it in a thing. It's not economical to go outfit every single parking spot in every single parking garage with an individual sensor, and then have wireless tech. It's better. Far more economical solution is I have a camera that the vision tech is good enough where I can scope up 4 cameras that covers the entire thing and can identify parking spots, right? So aggregate monitors and aggregate sensors become really interesting. Yeah.
Do you hire at UT and do you hire interns?
Yes.
Cool.
We are hiring interns. We've got one more slide that says we're hiring. Can you add not interns on there? Yes, we are hiring and can look at the
So you're bringing up PC industry, and you're also talking about the egg tray, and also can I suggest, how do you avoid the clippy kind of analogy of, hey, I see you're working on a Word document,
Right.
are you working on this? And I'm tired of that paperclip,
I think
it's gone.
I think we already did the clippy analogy, right? Which is we auto opted in Stacey Higginbotham to turn on announcements at 3 o'clock at night. I think it's you live and you learn. We're a startup and you take user feedback, and we're small and we take user feedback very seriously, and we try to learn from those lessons. But I think to me it's just how conservative are you taking these types of actions, promoting these things, making suggestions. I think over time you can give users ways to go see these things and turn them on or off, right? That's kind of how I see it. Is given the option, build a platform. We're into an interesting space now where we can take less and less responsibility because we're just building a platform, and the actual end user, the end kind of implementation person can go decide how to use those things. So it might just be, is an API endpoint that gives suggestions, but it's up to you as the data to implement it to actually surface those yourself. Yeah.
I'm a device maker, so how much does it cost to get to your platform?
Cheap. There you go. So,
Like Alexa, Google Broadcast.
yeah. So the way we do it is we generally charge, we built it a little bit in the last year or so, but it's generally on a per device cost. We're trying to get to a self-serve model where no matter how big or small you are, you can come kind of auto provision these services yourself, and the result is you get an API out of this, and you get Alexa and Google integration out of this, and integration out of this. That's still a little bit away, but if you have a device that you think is a consumer-grade device that's going to have interesting numbers, just really happy to talk. But to finally answer the question is, we charge kind of per device, so we
Per device per month, per year?
per device I'd have to go double check. It's basically per device in some way. But the thing that is important is the actual AWS costs, the server costs actually pass through still. So those things we charge kind of premium to say here's the service layer that we put on top of it, the API and other tools that you get with it, but costs associated with however you abuse the API and you have millions of interactions or whatever, you're still paying the base rate for the actual AWS cost. But that's the top two keeps one paying.
Who sends the bill? You or Amazon?
We've done it, I think, both ways where it's either you can manage that yourself, you can have the an AWS account and you just pay that yourself, or we can pass it through basically. We've done it both. It's still pretty early days. We've had tens of customers, most recently being, so they want to kind of understand that to themselves. Pretty good.
Yeah, I don't notice you have Bluetooth support. You have Zigbee and Wi-Fi. Do you have any plan to support Bluetooth?
So we don't have any support. Like we're not a hardware company. We run software. So we don't make hardware, fortunately. We work with we work with a bunch of consumer grade IoT companies on the app level and the one platform level, and we're generally doing REST APIs to them. So we support some multi-radio hubs that support Zigbee, support Z-Wave, and support Bluetooth, but we're platform radio agnostic. We don't really care where it is. On the thin cloud side, we work with a couple of kind of system integrator partners that build hubs, that build bridges, and we have one partner that kind of specializes in Zigbee, Z-Wave, and one that specializes in BLE. So if you have a device that is BLE, you need a way to get it to the cloud. We don't want to be involved, but we have partners that might get help us. Is it?
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Awesome state of the art where it's going. Just within the safety, the security part, door locks and stuff like that, with the cloud, where do you think the consumers are going to go? I mean, basically, if my smart home hub or whatever it is has to go out the doggy door, talk to the weather, the cloud, and then come back each time. I mean, it's okay if it's just messing with the coffee maker or
Sure.
something like that, but every time that happens, it's a risk that the door may unlock and a guy comes in, you don't want to come in. Where do you think that's going to go? Really more with perception than actuality?
Yeah, great question. I have a strong opinion, which is I am a huge geek, but I'm not a smart home enthusiast at that level. So I hear that type of thing from people who ask, like, everything has to be local because when I say Alexa, turn the lights, it needs to turn on. I fundamentally, 33, I grew up with the internet. The internet's pretty quick for me. I say turn on the lights, and it takes a second to turn on the lights. That's okay. Locks are a different story. Locks that specifically have a bridge or have to go to a low power mode, right? And they're walking back and forth between the bridge, and it's 15 seconds because they're deep sleep. That's a different story. I've seen solutions. I think it's kind of device solution. I've seen locks that will auto lock after. That's an option. So they can auto lock after some period of time if it thinks that you have a significant interaction or something, right? So I think there's ways for that to accommodate it. I think it's going to be application driven. There are all sorts of silly routines you can go build that say when the weather is 75 degrees, turn on my sprinklers and only do it in this case, right? Where it's all sorts of chain events and I can go get really creative and build things. But I think, interactions are going to be still relatively simple where you don't have to really worry about those things. Or you're application driven from platform level to an insurance company that is doing one thing and getting out. So I don't think it gets incredibly complicated. The other side of it, I think local is going to become a little bit more prevalent. There's kind of a push for that now, for local control. I think there's ways to do that where, the cloud is interfacing with the local bridge and doing some intelligence there and then talking to those devices. And same story as always, if a thief comes to your house and really wants to get in, right? It's just going through the window. He doesn't care about your smart lock. He'll find a way to get in.
What was why?
Yeah.
Well, I've been working with telecommunication solutions for a long time, and a couple of solutions is never trust one vendor. You always have two vendors. And I have a smart home, and I have two vendors for locks. I have two locks. If one is hacked, I know I can trust the other one, and vice versa. And the other thing is redundancy in terms of availability, high availability. I can't see a smart home without a smart hub for a couple of reasons. One is you have to have something to support the Zigbee and Z-Wave, the low energy networks. Wi-Fi is, as we talked about, the egg tray, just too much power consumption.
Yeah.
So having a smart hub is, to me, a mandatory thing. But I mean, then the whole, we talked a little bit about it here earlier, the whole notion of relying on internet as part of this won't work. I mean, if we want to have broader acceptance, you have to have fallback solutions. So, I mean, when you push the switch on the wall, it can't go through the cloud and depending on internet and routers and cloud services and coming back and finally I see the light comes on. But you have to have this smart home hub as a fallback and immediate, shortest possible latencies. There is lots of those types of things that, to me, just have to be there.
So I have some strong opinions, like personally, on actually disagreeing with you to some extent, which is, I think some consumers, I think there are certainly a facet of consumers that is the case, and they have things rigged up in a way that you has to be quick, right? And this is your expectation. I think there is another group, though, you start to look 10 years out, 20 years out, 5G is a thing.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Right?
I mean, just looking at my home, I have an actual question here after this. But I mean, in my home, I'm the smart techie geek. My wife is not. So she's not accepting, if she puts the push button for the light, she expects that light to come on instantaneously, M50 plus, and she as well. So we're a different generation, but...
Right.
No, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. For broader acceptance, I still think latency and immediate response, a little bit usability. We've got a couple of people here working with usability or user experiences. And to me, if things are not happening instantaneously, it's just, oh, it's out for me.
What's your belief? What's your definition of instantaneous?
Microseconds. I mean, like when I push the button on the wall, the light goes on.
Yeah.
There is no delay.
So I expect the button to go on. You know, I can see, I speak for myself, I mean, I can see a group of users where there's a balance between affordability and reliability and just convenience and ease of setup and all these things, and getting into mass market where I just want a smart bulb and an Alexa, right, and a voice assistant, and I just say turn on the light, and if it takes half a second, I'm okay with that instead of getting up to go, turn on the switch.
No, I like it. Right. Okay, my actual question there on the Yonomi application.
Yes, sir.
So, can that have like conditional logic? I like that. So only do this if my wife is not at home.
Yeah.
I can do that.
You can't, but that's our most requested feature, and it's
Okay, so it can't. Okay, so I'm just have to
Don't
see if
play this
say
music
I was
unless I'm
not to look for something that is not there yet.
Yeah, so that is, the multi-member household thing is a big deal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very important thing, really complicated to get right, and it's probably we're still not gonna get it right.
Commercial usability. I mean,
Well, yeah, when you start doing location information, right, now you've got to start doing things like validating that what you think is true is true.
Yeah. So I think that again, but shades of gray where maybe I don't actually have to understand my wife. My wife left her phone at home, it never left. But there's context, again, it's kind of context info. I can identify that she's gone here or there several different ways. Or maybe it's just, hey Alexa, I'm home. Alexa knows it's my voice. There's some at some point we can get that information that just says, I mean, maybe that's literally an event, right? Maybe that's literally context data is up to say I'm home, and now things are different because that condition is now.
And that works up until the point you go out the window and don't tell them.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's ways to do it. We've worked with cameras before, right? That have facial detection, Nest, and lighthouses. All these cameras that know when you come home. There's ways to solve it.
So I think to the other chap's point though, so I've got a case in point. 2 weeks ago, I have AT&T fiber, and it went out, and it was out for 24 hours. Because
So
they
it
had
wasn't
to
a backhoe that took it out.
who knows? They had to go replace a cable fiber somewhere. So if I had a fully connected home that was internet only driven, I'd be SOL.
Yeah, so I'm not advocating your opinion. I would still never get rid of like physical switches. But you know, if my physical switch still works, I can still go control these devices individually if I want. To me, at this point, and things evolve, right? And there's obviously a high-level vision and some desire amongst all our geeks about how these things work. But I can still open the Sonos app. The Sonos app still works over local WebSockets. I don't have to. I can still go up to the Sonos thing and touch it, right? I can still go up to my ETX LED switch and touch it at the wall. It still works. It doesn't have to have internet. You can think of very few devices that, especially smart home devices, that don't, you know, that require internet to work. And that's a choice as a consumer that, you know, you need to be front and center about this requires this thing. But I do think this thing changes over time. To make that silly Trump joke about 5G and 6G and 7G, but over time, network speeds get better. We have, right, that connectivity layer is invisible to us, and there should be, reading the other days, there's satellite tech that can turn any mobile phone into a satellite phone because they have low enough satellites and a precise enough beam that anything can communicate the 100 miles straight out to a satellite that's overhead. So I think it's going to come very quickly. 10 years, there is invisible layer of connectivity that everyone's paying for anyhow.
That's my fallback. I have a 4G modem as an alternative backup.
Right. So you already answered.
But I'm working with telecommunications. I have been working.
Sure.
So my mindset is always in terms of
Understood,
multiple locks, different vendors, different alternative internet access means. But I mean, the only point. I mean, I think this is fun. It's really fun to work with smart home technologies, but it's also so much challenges that people are completely missing yet.
Right.
I mean, just coming down to basics. When you buy a new bulb, you put it in and you're off and go. You buy a smart bulb, you have to pair it. And then it works for a while and then stops working. Okay, what the hell is going on? You have to unpair and pair, repair.
Well,
I mean, it's just, I mean, things like that also needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
So, QR code on the bulb or what? Just scan it and it's on.
Right.
I mean, there are means to do it. It's just lots of things that still needs to be.
I think my third most visited Google site is Yonomi support, and it's email, and then it's how to reset this specific type of Zigbee bulb. It is 5 seconds on, 5 seconds
don't
off.
use your phone because
2
you
seconds on.
can do two-factor authentication.
So, what segment of the ecosystem players you think have a better strategic advantage to influence and set the standards for that interoperability? Is that Amazon or DigitalOcean like cloud service provider or Google Cloud providers, or is that hardware manufacturers of these devices that's going to be sensor makers basically, or is that cell phone operating system? Who is going to have an upper hand when they are, you know, picking that interoperable standards?
So that's a great question. This is one we're starting to work with right now, which is, you see like Zigbee, there's a C spec, there's all these kind of specs for like archetypes and finding these things. Google has kind of their own spec, OCS, there's dot. We're defining kind of our own set of traits. Google has a set of traits, Amazon has a set of traits. I think this is the same pattern we see for everything, because everyone has their own thing. Ideally, you can go draw, some people have it's the XKC con, right, which is there were 13 protocols, and I'm going to solve this problem now, there's 14 protocols. But ideally, you can at least start to draw some bubbles, because there are industry working groups that will agree that they don't have to go recreate the wheel. It's going to happen.
So what's your personal take, with the given the fact that you've been in the industry for so long, working with so many different platforms?
Who actually will win?
Yeah, who do you think will have that strategic advantage to make it happen, so we invest accordingly?
I don't know if the actual strategy, well, the strategy is to pick a winner, right? But I think it comes down to more than just what their base strategy is. We've got to look at, no one would have expected Amazon would be the proven smart home player right now 4 years ago, right? So there's a chance for someone to come out of the woodwork and take over. I think Google and Amazon do have their heads on straight generally about how to go do these things. I think it really depends on, what's your application? Are you a device maker? What do you?
I manufactured my own smartphone brand in the past because I was was seeing that as the hub of the Internet of Things in your home. So I knew that that was your remote control in a way for everything that you
That's how we
do
see
it.
it, yeah.
So that's why instead of having all different sensors in the house, I wanted to control the device so I can control everything else. So that was the winning piece in that IoT services for a smart home. That smartphone was gonna be. Like I could have made like a doorbell or Nest type of a software, but I wasn't sure if that was gonna be basically the center of the mess. So that is why the question comes in a way that I do intellectual property strategies, right? I'm collecting a bunch of patents so that I can build companies that is defendable with those kind of patents. And I want to make sure that I'm collecting the right type of patents in the right space so that the companies I build based on those, a bunch of companies based on those patent portfolio will be in a better position and a key player in everybody that they will do business with.
Yeah, I mean, I think from that's an interesting perspective. I think you probably need to go look at total user, growth and how many users these people have, because they kind of locked in. Google with 1 billion users, right, is doing pretty well. With 1 billion people in this assistant race, I do think the bigger discussion here, right, is everything kind of smart home is just a very specific vertical kind of system ecosystem for a lot of these big tech companies. But it depends on the application level. So the device makers will tell you that they care about what the things look like at the chip level, and firmware will be a different thing, and the PC software will be server software will be a different thing, and the cloud will be a different thing.
And you're back to context again, right? What goes on in somebody who's got little kids in the house is going to be different than somebody dealing with aging in place versus people that are dealing with an entire commercial building.
And so I think basically, I'm sure well familiar if you're in the IP space, but you probably need to be familiar and up to speed on what we call is sort of one shot talking about assistants, and it's Amazon, Google, and Johnny, and the other Alibaba, right? China, like coming up very fast too. So I think it's going to be another one of those things where everything is back into 25% each. Not a bad space for us as an agnostic provider. Maybe that's one good answer is you actually see someone come along and commit to bidirectional kind of open standards and actually at their own expense push that, then maybe that's something to watch for. They're going to hurt themselves a little bit. But if anyone can come along and say, yeah, I'll be open both ways if everyone else is, and also I'm not just an industry standard, but I have users to back that up, that might be, maybe that would take some shots with it, they might have to, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's not my thoughts.
No, I appreciate you taking a shot at it. I know it's not an easy one, but I was probably trying to get to just to put a framework on the way we're thinking about this is basically like, for instance, the apps, right? There is a standards that you submit to the App Store, and those standards are decided by iOS, Apple, or Android. And these are the two basically standard setters. If you want to go for the number of users, you might want to go for Android. You might want to go for the wealth of the people who are using your apps. You might want to go for iOS. But these are the two basically who controls millions of apps and ideas and what you can do with those apps. And they are basically the control gates. And I was seeing with the way the IoT ecosystem and the system is set up, who will be that gatekeeper and setting the stage for everyone else to follow and qualify?
Hey, Josh, can we wrap it up?
We can wrap it up.
Then we can stick around and talk.
Let's say it's a company
that got billions of dollars.
I got one quick question. Similar note. Your operation model is assuming that each smart things, device, the end device, the light bulb, the thermostat, are connecting through the smartphone.
Not necessarily the smartphone, but they're
Connect through a router
connected to the cloud is our kind of.
directly. So you assume the light bulb can connect directly to the cloud.
Our current model is that we only target, we don't target all consumers, right? We don't have direct like Zigbee or Z-Wave or Bluetooth access with one switch out here. Our model is we are talking to devices in the cloud.
you're assuming each device can talk to the cloud.
Yes, and that might be through a bridge, so if it's Zigbee or
Yeah,
Zigbee,
it may have to
it
go
has to have a
through
bridge.
some common control point, as you say, either go through a smartphone or go through a router or go through a hub, right?
Yes. So one exception for our platform, that's true. Our app actually supports for a limited set of use cases for like Dock and Wemo, for Hue, and for Sonos. You can actually connect directly over Wi-Fi to some of those devices because we didn't have cloud access to those things. We're still learning for a couple of them, TV and the other one. So we actually talk to those locally, and we're actually sending payloads down to your phone. We're actually using the phone as a bridge, as a virtual gateway, and then sending commands over your local network to those devices. But in general, yeah, the center point of the cloud.
There has to be a control point, right, if the device cannot connect to it.
And we have to have that API. So thanks, guys. And last announcement is we put trivia back up. There are some, it's swag over there. You can win some sweet yellow Yonomi socks. So get in on that.
Yes, if you tweet at us, but I haven't got any winners yet. I think this was cheated, so I'm not caring.
I did cheat.
So if you tweet at us, we can send it your way, but no one's won yet.
All right.
Thank you.